Overboard. It took 2 days and nights for Marty and Bertha to get the mess to square away. During that time, Marty did not leave the galley once, preferring to take short naps on the cot Wolf brought in for him to sleep on. Bertha was uncharacteristically passive, leaving every decision to Marty, as if she were his lieutenant and Marty was the general. Marty watched all of the cooks, figured out their culinary strengths and weaknesses, and assigned prep stations accordingly. At first, they were resentful for taking orders from a kid, but that quickly passed when they saw that the kid knew exactly what he was doing. All those years Marty had spent in the kitchen at Omega Prep with some of Europe's great chefs were paying off. The compliments from the crew over the delicious food energized not only Marty but the entire galley staff. The good food put smiles on everyone's faces. Those same smiles faded a bit when Wolf announced that they had arrived at Caracrow Canyon and would be going no further. That they would be anchored above the canyon and stay there until they caught a giant squid, then head straight back to Seattle without shore leave in New Zealand. But even with the news, the crew was still happier than they had been on the voyage from Kryptos. There had been no more accidents and only a couple of reports of things missing or being mysteriously moved. Late in the evening for his second day as galley supervisor, Marty told Bertha he needed to go up to the deck for some fresh air. "We have it under control down here," Bertha said. "Take your time. In fact, why don't you spend the night in your own cabin? Let's see how the cooks do on their own." "Deal," Marty said. "I'll see you tomorrow morning." On his way up, he was tempted to stop at Lab 9 and check on the hatchlings, but he was too desperate for fresh air. 48 hours of butter, olive oil, garlic, onions, fish, dough, and meat had been enough. He didn't want to add dinosaur poop to the mix before he filled his lungs with brisk sea air. Grace, Luther, Wolf, and Laurel had all been in the mess to eat and had told him about what was happening with the hatchlings. They had outgrown the incubator and had been moved to a pen on the floor of the lab. They were walking now and had taken a shine to Luther, following him around like chicks following a mother hen. Grace was a little jealous of this obvious affection for Luther. She said the only reason they liked him better was that he had given them their first taste of blood. Marty reached the deck and took in a deep breath of fresh sea air, which smelled like perfume compared to the greasy galley. The dark sky was moonless, lit by millions of stars. The Kolenkopf was anchored. He walked over to the rail and looked down at the water. Somewhere beneath the dark water, a giant squid awaited. "Tomorrow, if things are going well in the galley, I'll spend the day on deck getting some sun," he thought. "I can fly the dragonfly and goof off and then something slammed into his back, and he was falling over the wrong side of the rail. One of the flailing hands managed to snag the edge of the scupper, and he came to a shoulder-wrenching stop. He managed to get his other hand onto the scupper, but his position was still precarious. He first thought Bo was loose again. She loved sneaking up behind people and pushing them, but the push had been too hard. Something a lot bigger than Bo had hit him. He had tried to pull himself up, but he didn't have enough strength. He began to yell his head off. The sharp edge of the scupper was cutting off the circulation to his fingers. If someone didn't hear him in a minute or so, he was going to drop into the dark sea and never be heard from again. He looked up as he continued to shout for help. The bottom rung of the rail was a good 2 feet above his head, impossible to grab, even if his shoulder wasn't killing him. It was a miracle that he had caught the scupper, but all the miracle was going to do was delay a watery death. "Someone help me!" Marty felt for some kind of purchase with the shoes to help relieve his aching arms and fingers. There was nothing but the slick metal skin of the old ship. He wished Wolf had reactivated his tracking tag when he sentenced Marty to kitchen patrol. If it were active, he could tear it off and Roy or Joe would come running. The gizmo was in his pocket, and he was afraid to pull it out. He'd never be able to hang on with one arm. He wondered if Ted had thought to make the gizmo waterproof. There was a good chance it was. Ted had thought of everything else. He might be able to make a call after he hit the water if a shark didn't get him first. Help! Man overboard! Boy overboard! Help! Grab the line! A rope flew over the rail and slapped the hole right next to him. Marty grabbed it with tears of relief flowing down his face. I'm alone, a voice shouted above him. I can't pull you up. Can you climb on your own? I think so, Marty shouted back. The rough rope felt like soft leather compared to the edge of the scupper. He ignored the pain in his shoulder and his fingers and started up the rope like a monkey, desperate to get the deck under his feet. When he reached the bottom rail, a pair of hands reached out and pulled him over the top. The hands belonged to Theo Sonborn. I thought I lost you, Theo said. You gotta be more careful. Marty's grateful grin turned into a sour frown as he got to his feet. I was pushed. Pushed? Why would someone push you? That's a good question, Theo, but here's a better one. Where were you when I was pushed? You don't think I pushed you. Marty didn't answer. Why would I push you overboard then save you? Maybe because I managed to save myself and I was screaming my head off and you thought someone else might hear. If it happened to see me before I went over and someone else saved me, it would be all over for you. I know you're one of Noah Blackwood's spies. I didn't push you. I saved you, and I'm not one of Noah Blackwood's spies. But I would still like to know more about those dinosaur eggs you were telling me about the other day. You were talking about dinosaur eggs, and I told you that it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. There are no dinosaur eggs, which is true, Marty thought. At least it is now. Theo smiled. Come on, Marty. I didn't push you. If it weren't for me, you'd be swimming with the fishes. The very least you can do is tell me about those eggs, and I ain't working for Blackwood on this lie. I just want to know to satisfy my own curiosity. I'll tell you what, Theo. How about you and I go find Wolf, and you can ask him about the dinosaur eggs? Okay, Theo said. This wasn't the answer Marty was expecting. You really want to ask Wolf about the eggs? Why not? All right, Marty said, rubbing his sore shoulder. Let's go.